about virtual machines, and we try to understand what is difference between PAAS and IaaS. So I took an example of PAAS as a cloud service as a PAAS example, and virtual machines as an IaaS example. Okay, IaaS services from Azure. So you can see like for IaaS, like you will have the changes or the level of changes you can do on a software is at till the OS level. You can change the OS as well. You can change it. You can get a virtual machine, install Hyper-V on top of it, and put any other Linux machines are also on top of it, or you can get a Linux image itself. Okay, or get a virtual machine and try to or what you can do is, if you have your own virtual machine VHD, then you just try booting up that particular VHD into a virtual machine. You can do that. But when it comes to cloud services, right, you can't tamper with the OS level changes. What you can do is, like, you can do allow patch updates to be applied or not, or if it need to be applied, at what time it need to be applied, during the daytime or during the night time, so that your application is not getting hindered. Those kind of things, or application level changes, like application which is installed uh, on that particular cloud services, you can change, or the firewalls which are there you can change, or the virtual networks which you configure you can change. So those are the things, and let me show that via an Azure portal, like how I just go create a cloud service. Okay, cloud service is basically classic type. You guys know, right, how DNS works? If not, let me take a little bit of time and explain how DNS works. So DNS is a DNS is just a domain name server. What it do is, this is a domain name server. What it do is, like, it has a mapping of like for this we are creating the Azure guy dot cloudapp.net .net, which has mapping with the IP, where exactly, I mean, like the VM IP, like that, or the role IP, you can say. Okay, and whenever a user calls from over the internet, he calls this particular name, he knows by name, and what DNS would return is, he will try to query, and he will get the VM IP. When you try to call this particular name, you will get a VM IP. So when he connects, so what happens is, when he made a call to this one, the DNS returns a VM IP to the user or to the web browser by which he is accessing. He would be accessing via web browser. So the web browser would, or the RDP client, you can say, so which will be, trying to access your particular cloud service. So RDP client will get the IP. Okay, once it gets IP, it setups a session, secure session with the virtual machine or role. Okay, and the same thing, like what happens with the cloud service, I'd be explaining. And when it comes to the cloud service, what happens is, like, so this is, so let me explain the other thing, like what are the okay, I'll explain this one, where we have a Visual Studio. Okay, like we have you can see, we tried to make an application, we were making an application, right, and this application is this one, and it is nothing but a normal MVC. You can see model view controller, an MVC web app, and which has a like little container of Azure or Azure kind of wrapper on top of it, okay, which is called as this Azure Cloud Service, which has a web role, okay, and it is also having something called a .cscfg and definition file. Okay, so web role, as explained previously, you can mention the instance size. Since cloud service is a PAAS kind of services, so you have instance size you can explain from here, ranging from small to complete D14 series of PM. Okay, and this particular sizes you can change even after the deployment. Even after you have deployed this application, at runtime you can change, and this would be having a very minimalistic time of turnaround time or uptime, because the instance, which like what happens is your application would be running, it doesn't have any disturbances. What happens is it goes and switch overs that particular once you change an IP, the IP changes, the application gets installed on another particular node, and then it is done. It will the cloud DNS will have a different mapping of IP. So what happens is like when I said of a different mapping of IP is like so before that let's jump back to our cloud services, this one. So I have my VS project, okay, and this VS project produces .cspackage file and .cscfg file. So once this what we do is like we upload this to the portal, and last time we tried to do this, and this is a cloud service, Azure Cloud Service, and the Azure Cloud Service have nothing but it's just a group of VMs which would be behind, and these are this is again the rack server which is there, and which is having this rack server is having the orange color things are the node, the Hyper-V, and on top of that the node, you can say, and top of that we have roles which are running on, like it would be like this node would be having Hyper-V, and top of that we have these blue color nodes, blue color VM roles, or roles are nothing but compute power. Okay, so your cloud services, the package would go to cloud service, and the cloud service would copy into 3 different locations in your storage account. So you would be mentioning your storage account while deploying this particular cloud services. So in that particular cloud service, that particular storage only, the package would be going and pasted into it. So once that is done, your package, after replicating into 3 different locations in storage account, you would be that package would be taken into this particular any of the nodes. If you have selected A1 series or D1 series, it just depends upon them, and the call goes, or the package goes and sits inside this particular thing. So what happens inside the IAAS is like when I try to deploy my application, this is my let us take this is my box, this is my desktop, or it's basically it's node only. So what happens is I have IAAS running in it. Okay, this is IAAS, and your application need to go and sit on IAAS if it's a .NET application, and if it's something called as the Java application, and it would go somewhere and sit in installed Apache server. Okay, so your package comes down here, and the Fabric controller, what it do, it helps in deploying this package into this particular IAAS. Okay, and once that particular it's hosted on this particular local host, some port number, so the IP and the port number, you can say this particular port number is written back to the Fabric controller, and then it returns back to the cloud service. So this is a IP, this is a VM IP we have, and this is something called a local host IP and the port number, so which goes the IP and the port number, which is returned back. And then so what happens is once it's put up the package, it restarts this particular IAAS. So after it restart, the application is now available, and the Fabric controller will go and say to the cloud service that yeah, your application is up and running in this particular location. So then that's how, like, when you try to access something on the Azure cloud, the Azure guy dot cloud app dot net, you will directly would be accessing this particular this particular location, application running in this particular location. So that's how things works in cloud services. It's nothing much more difference than a regular virtual machine. If we take a virtual machine, it would be, it's a virtual machine. It's running on some Hyper-V. Okay, the same thing will happen. You have fixed OS, everything. You can't change anything. You take up your package manually with your hands. You RDP into it. You RDP into this particular VM, and then you take up this and put up in your IAAS, running in IAAS, or Apache in case of a Java web app. It's the same thing. And so the only thing is, the abstraction which is there on security perspective or administration perspective is the only difference between the PAAS or IaaS services. So the sizes, the sizes, just I'll explain, but like how sizes changes and what happens internally, and you can you can mention by default this which particular endpoints you want to host. If you have an SSL cert, yeah, go ahead and put it HTTPS, and for debugging locally, you can have something called as Azure Storage Emulator. This is the emulator. Okay, so emulator is, we have compute emulator and storage emulator both. Emulator will, whenever you run any kind of Azure application, like if you run your application in Azure, right, that kind of environment, complete set of environment, it setups in this particular emulator. Using this emulator, it just replicates the Azure environment which is running in a local host. So what I'll do is just I'll try to build this app and let it built, and this is a settings place, and you can put all your endpoints, and yes, this is a this is a certificate place where you will be keeping your management certificate as well. So what happens is when you try to deploy this particular application on, I'll directly click publish. So I'm trying to publish this application onto Azure, and so when you try to publish, last time what we tried is we tried to package in, we'll try to publish it directly. Like publish you can use in cases where you have not created the cloud service already and you just want to push it. And so this is the way, like we can go the other way. Like you actually need to add something called as management certificate or self-signed certificate, and what happens here, you need to use Mixer tool, the default tool for this, and I'll paste out the link as well, how to create certificate. This is a link to create a self-signed certificate. cert format. Need to create a public cert. Why it need to be created, I'll let you know. Let's go with the Visual Studio. Yes, Visual Studio definitions. Let's go next. I'll give my cloud service name. Show guy. I have not created yet, so it should be available. Region or affinity group. Affinity group, South and Southeast Asia. I'll let you know what are affinity groups when we will be knowing about more on virtual networks, networking concepts. And this replication would be required. Your package will go and sit on to a storage account. So Azure storage accounts are these many types. They are locally redundant. Locally redundant means it will your package or your package will be maintained in 3 different locations in a same DC, in 3 different nodes, storage nodes or storage clusters in a same DC. Geo redundant is across DC. It would across data centers. It would, and read access geo redundant. It would maintain across geographical places in different DC, but read access you'll have one read access. Locally zone redundant and premium will also be coming to know when we'll talk about more on Azure storage. I'll just go select local redundant and create it. It will create my Azure Cloud Service. Yes, it has created without any issue. And yeah, these are the environment. This is a debug as like what we have in Azure Cloud Service is something called as production or staging. So staging basically you would be knowing as like these are, I'm talking about deployment slots. So staging slots you will be knowing like when you try to develop a particular product, you try to put in a test environment or staging environment, and then you take up to prod once you don't see any issues with that particular application. So that slot is staging. So let's select staging for now, and I'll just select my debug this one, and anything is okay since we don't have different configuration for cloud and local. And I'll enable remote desktop connection. Last time we did this. I'll give, and this deployment is going to fail for sure. Yes, I set my RDP. I'll create map inside resources. I don't want. Let's click next. No, I don't want any application inside data. Click next. Okay. Okay, everything is there. Let's publish. So this request should go to our cloud service. So this is a manual way of creating it, and that is a so last time what happened, like we had issues saying that we can't able to deploy our application onto this because something we have something called in Azure is this particular management certificates. You need to have certificate to upload any service package or anything, so that like whenever you try to make an RDP to the cloud instances, everything, you will have that certificate to present it for setting up a secure session. If you don't have any certificate, like self-signed certificate at least, you will not be able to RDP into that particular machine, and you will not be it's the putting up this management certificates onto Azure is also a statement saying that only this particular machine or a user with this particular subscription can only deploy his package onto cloud service. It's not that any other your application is running fine and someone finds your subscription and he just deploys another package, any dummy package of your of any other application instead of your application. Instead of you running Flipkart or Amazon application on Azure, he can post some hack websites on top of it and he can just go ahead with that. So in order to avoid those kind of issues, you have something called as management certificate concepts, and for that only like you need to go and create self and certificate. I have not created yet right now for this particular machine. That's what, like, I pasted this particular link, and you just create your self and certificate. As it said, you can create this self and certificate using Visual Studio. Open Visual Studio in administrator mode, and make a .cr format of it. So if you have any issues with .cr format, making a .cr format, you can use this command to just convert your .pfx or other files into .cr files. I'll paste it as well. Okay. So once you have the .cr file, you just go to the certificate section, and I just enabled RDP, so it had added the thumbprint. Okay, so this thumbprint, and once you make that SSL certificate or SSL certificate, the certificate thumbprint would be will get populated here. Okay, so once the thumbprint, both the thumbprint, the like application, if you are deploying onto Azure, and the thumbprint which is already hosted on this particular portal, or it's assigned to this particular portal in your subscription matches, then only you will have a perfect deployment happening, and you can make RDP into your application as well. Our publish is succeeded, but will not be able to RDP into it. So this is our cloud service, and so it will populate everything, deployment ID, other thing. So the cloud service would be, it's a container, and it's a public face of your application. So the public IP is associated with your cloud service. So you will have this public IP which will get populated. So what happens, in this in this meantime, it is like as explained earlier. Earlier in the diagram, like we have something. Explain the diagram, like we will have in the tag.cloudapp.net, okay, or the Azure guide.cloudapp.net. That is tagged with VM IP. So your package is there, and it is tagged with the VM IP, and let it come. I'm waiting for it to come. So once the IP comes, that particular IP would be, your package went, and it's this all process is happening. Your package is stored in storage account, and then your package is stored in the call went to the package went to this cloud service, and it has stored in the storage account, and then it's trying to get an IP, and then of a node, and then install in that particular IAAS inside this. These all things are happening, and that particular IP would be returned to your cloud service, and cloud service will be having your public IP and the DNS name. And Azure has its own DNS, so it maintains a record of, if you call something called as cloudapp.net, the call from Google or any search web browsers, the call comes to Azure, and the Azure resolves Azure DNS, and the Azure DNS resolves it to internal IPs here. Let it come. So this particular cloud service will be having, once you create a cloud service, you actually do not mention about creating other resources. For example, so the storage is created. This is storage. So this is a storage which is created, and inside which we have a number of packages into it. And once you create the cloud services, it takes care of creating VNet behind, and in that particular VNet only you have your roles or instances running into this. Since I have mentioned for only one instance, you can check. I have mentioned only one instance, that is small, so it would have created one instance with a small size VM. So it would have went and acquired like one instance, one core, and one VM instance with a smaller size RAM, and it would have it's doing all the stuff. So what happens, when you try to change this particular size over the portal once it populates, so you can scale at any moment. That's a benefit of using cloud service. So you have your the staging slot. Since you have selected staging slot to deploy your application, it's into the staging slot, and there's a web role 1, which the project or the application which we have posted, and we can you can enable auto scale as well. Auto scaling is something, okay, let me discard this first. This is scaling up your instance count. You are increasing, and once you save this, your application would be deployed into these many number of VM roles. So it may occupy almost half of your rack server. I mean, not half, 1/4 of your rack server if you go on to full. If you have a limitation of 10,000 VM role instances with your single application. So it is such scalable, the cloud services, and it's easy to deploy as well. And since we have selected one VM instances, yes, we are it. And what happens sometimes, like like when the traffic is going to hit, and you want to scale this particular application without any manual interventions, like it doesn't need to come up here and change this instances according to it. What you can do is, like, you can enable auto scale settings. You can auto scale one setting, you can say. You can come, and what you can do, you can scale to specific instances, like at this particular time, you just I'll schedule a time, and you make into 100 instances or something. Or what you can do, the perfect thing is, like, using a auto scale is, you can put a scale of CPU percentage. Since Azure takes care of, or it reads about your CPU cycles, or how much your CPU or traffic is incoming to your system, like that, you can scale out or increase your instances. For example, if your computer reaches something to say 70% of CPU percentage, then you can increase this particular instance count by 1% every time. So you can add other rules also, where you can mention that incoming traffic, or you can mention latency, or you can mention, like, your service, your application, your instances went down. In that cases also, you can bring up one more instances which can actually compensate and will make your application availability to the max. So you can go, like, instance limits from 1 or the minimum, you can go to till 50. What happens is, like, your CPU had increased to 70% when you have a single VM count. You have single VM role which is running, and it had reached 70%. And Autoscale had worked, and it spun up one more VM role as well. But after that as well, the CPU percentage didn't decrease, and it is still 70%. So what it would do, it would add one more like that, and it would go and reach till a maximum of VM instances of 50. Maximum 50 in count. That's a benefit of auto scale, and moving your workloads to Azure. And you can do this, configure this using a JSON as well. You can put up all the things whatever are there in a JSON format and run this, or save this, and it will run on that particular cloud services on node which is there. So you can put notification as well. Once you configure something called as auto scale, you can put up notification as well. So whenever your auto scale get triggers, you will be getting notified to your email ID. And what's the purpose of this is, you may know that how much your application is scaling, and you can also track, like, if sudden burst of traffic is coming to your application, you can try to go and monitoring an application insights website as well. Okay, and you can take certain actions. If your if it's a genuine traffic increase or someone is trying to hack, also you can, you can just check it from this particular place. Discard this. So that's about the cloud service. So let's talk about when I go to this particular cloud service and come on, my IP is not coming yet. Refresh. Maybe we have we have an issue with our package file. That's why we didn't add, because we have not added our something called as management certificate in this particular location. Thumbprint here, but this thumbprint doesn't matches with any of the certificates which is available on Azure. That's why it's not allowing to deploy. But I should have got some information or error for that, but I didn't get. Okay, let's talk about once you have application on it. I'll come up with this particular thing. I'll put up management certificate, and then we'll RDP into it, and we will check the package in IAAS as well. So before that, you can RDP into this, as I said. If you're running number of roles, like more than one instances, you will be having all of them here. And if you want to RDP into particular role, you can select that particular role and you can RDP into it. And if you want to install install certain kind of applications or more firewall firewall or other applications or add-ons, you can just go to extensions and install. And this is the certificate sections where I'm talking about, where you can put up your management certificate here as well. And there's a scale section which I want to talk about is you can scale your application. And this is auto scale. I want to resize, I want to scale out. So there's two things which are there in in Azure, something called as scale out and scale out, and then we have something called as scaling. Go properties. They have changed a bit. The UI they have changed. So I go to this particular Azure portal, and what I do, I try to change. I have this cloud service, right? I just go inside it, and okay, I don't have package installed on top of it. That's why I'm not able to see it. Let's see the scale. Okay, until you don't have any package on top of it, you don't see your scale properties. Or scale is VM sizing, you can say. Like if I have initially I have adapted for something called as small instance. If I want to move to like standard or D14 series, and my cloud service had went and sat on this particular A1 series VM. This, you can say that this is the A1 series node which is there, and this particular cluster or node completely have A1 series. And when I try to change the size, I get instruction from this particular cloud service and says that you need to install your application now from A1 series to D series. D series are available in this particular node. So what can happen, when you try doing this, and your cloud services sometimes can fail, because when you go to this particular DS series, if it's DS series in this particular cluster, it's not available, the DS series VM, then it need to hop across to another cluster and make your deployment possible. So previously it's not supported, the hopping of your cloud service from one particular DC to another DC. If it's in complete data center, if it's your service, there's no DS series VM which is available, sorry boss, you need to deploy again your services onto another new DCs where it's available right now. You can't spin up, you can't directly say that, yeah, change my size from small to the standard D1 series while the application is running and you are done. Yes, if it's available, what it happens, it will happen, it will try to take up this particular package and put it in DS series, and till that this particular DS series comes up, this application, your request would be going to this application, and you don't feel any downtime of your application, or your application will not be unavailable. So once this IP available, there would be just a DNS switching, like the IPs would switch from this particular A1 series VM to DS series VM. That's it, which happens with the cloud service, but this is not possible with IaaS machines. So you guys can try this particular cloud service, create your own cloud service. I have created my own template. I have not created anything new. I have went to this particular and then created a cloud service, and I just added a Messi web app. And what you need to add is just these things, the certificate thing, and the RDP thumbprint would be added automatically. You can add certificates or thumbprint from your root folder, IAAS root folder, or certificate root folder, or from CA or any other trusted. If you have any SSL certificate you are putting up, you can have your trusted certificate, trusted store name, everything. And that was cloud service. And let's go back to our slides. So that was the basic difference between PAAS, the PAAS and the IaaS services which we have. So when it comes and you choose an Azure website, that's also that Azure website is that it will not give, it's a PAAS service, but it will not give even the firewall rules or virtual network setup, even though that particular admin level access you will not have with the Azure websites. Yes, we talked a lot about the VM series size. So let's talk about something called as, when you go with the VM sizes, I'll create compute, I'll create a Windows VM. So when you choose a virtual machine size, right, it just depends upon whether it's normal hard disk or it's a solid state drive. And so upon your selections, right, you will have various options. So each and every VM will be having, or the base criteria would be something like this. Like if you go with like premium or SSD, you will have a premium disk support, or it would be SSD disk. This series of VM would be having SSD disks option as well, and you will have a load balancing where you can you can have number of VMs under a load balancer, and you can control these VMs. If I have two set of VMs under a load balancer, I can control what or how much traffic can go to this particular VM or this particular VM. And this is IOPS, which I talked about already, input output per second. And this is the SSD, the bandwidth, 7 GB of complete traffic or packets you can transfer, or read rates can happen. The traffic, 7 GB of traffic can go in and out of this pipeline. And these are the data disks. If you want more number of secondary disks, you go for data disk. Here it's 4 for E4S series VMs, and it's just 2 for D series VM. But you have a quite reasonable amount of RAM here, and this RAM is huge, tremendous, 32 GB of RAM. It just depends upon your application which you want to choose, and you want to host on Azure. Yes, there is a flexibility, like you can choose or swap into any other sizes from A0 to D series at any moment. And with A0 you doesn't have, you get a data disk and max apps of 300. That's what it's about VM's virtual machine sizes. And going on to next sizes. Yeah, I already talked about the virtual machine. Yeah.
Girish, Madi here.
Yeah, Madi.
Yeah, regarding this sizing.
Yeah.
I was region-wise, is there any difference with the pricing and the options that are available? Because I am not seeing that A0 basic, A1 basic in my list when I was creating VM.
Yeah,
so
maybe
giving some
the location
minimum of.
Yeah. Maybe the location you're choosing, you may be choosing Indian location or somewhere. I mean,
No,
where,
West US I selected.
okay,
West
maybe.
US 1.
Okay, okay, okay. So what happens that the same, man? Like your DC doesn't, or your the DC where you're selecting Red West Europe are exhausted with A0 machines because West US
Mm-hmm.
came up very
Yeah,
early. Uh-huh.
and it was not showing that HDD and SS options also on top
Is it?
to select.
You should
Yeah.
have. You should have if this particular data center. I mean, West US have SSD solid state drives. You should not. We should not have any issue. Let me select West US instead of Southwest US.
West US 1 is not
See,
allowing that.
SSD support is not there in West US. SSD I selected. Okay, it's not there in this region.
Yeah, I selected West US 1 and
Okay, now, this is another case also. My subscription can't span or can't create a virtual machine in West US. They have set some
yeah.
limitation as well. Yeah, that was not there earlier, but maybe some limitation they would have they would have come up. That's why subscription wise they would have divided, because my subscription was created in India location or Asian location. So I'll mostly customers would go and prefer to create in this particular locations, right? Maybe that
Yeah,
like utilization
yeah.
issues or
I'm
something.
also forced to go to West
Exactly.
US and West US 1,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I was not getting that VM disk type option also there.
Yeah, and another main thing which would have happen, we have something called, this subscription is free subscription, right? VS Dev. This is for
Yeah.
this one testing purpose. So mostly like what happened, like while I was in the application inside Steam, what Microsoft did is like they are completely moving all your staging application in West US and in Central US. They are putting up South Central US or other Central US locations. They are putting up their production machines, production applications, so that when you're testing something, right, load, if you're putting up with your production machines applications as well, they are very getting hindered. So now Azure made compulsory that you would post your testing applications somewhere in West US like that. But our subscription, it's not a premium subscription or paid version, right? So that's why we have a
Mm.
lot of limitations like this. Got it?
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
got it.
that's also a possibility because I'm not able to create a normal hard disk VM as well in West US. Yeah, thanks for putting up this point. So we have very limited locations to create up. So the resize also we talked about, like what happens when you resize a VM inside the inside the cluster. What happens? How it goes and assigns to a new node from A series to D series. We said, right, that. So before planning, the virtual machine deployments, you need to read up your workloads, or you need to know what kind of workloads you are learning. I'm like you are going to carry out, and you have something tool which actually, if you're taking up your workload from on-prem to Azure, you can run that particular tool on your on-prem, and it will give you the details like what is optimized way you can take up this to Azure, and what kind of sizes you can look out on Azure, you can create on Azure. Okay, it will give a detailed analysis report. What kind of planning activities you can do is, you can determine what kind of VM sizes according to that report, and you can check out the prices for those workloads according to that. And you may also define, like if you're trying to connect to your virtual machines via SSH or other clients, you need to check out that particular virtual machines are supporting it or not. Or you need to like if your virtual machines at on-premise are part of some virtual network, and if it's a very complex virtual VNet you have at on-premise, and before taking it to Azure, or the DNS which you have, you need to take up a DNS which you need to set up, like, or the DNS which you have in your local, whether it supports or it can, adapt the machines, the names of machines. Like if you have something called as on-premise vm1.something.domain.com, whether it supports on Azure or not, or other related services also you need to check. We talked about DNS in the rough scratch diagrams on our paper, and you may also, if you have a plan of you putting up the business for 10 more years and you want to save a lot of money, and in that cases you can put your or take your migration or take your virtual machine and migrate to Azure as well. And if you want to have good disaster recovery plans which you can not achieve, certain disaster recovery patterns which you can't actually achieve by staying on-prem, you can achieve on Azure. Yes, go ahead with your cloud-based virtual machines for that. And before taking your virtual machines, basically the virtual machines would be running on your local Hyper-V, on-prem Hyper-V. I have described earlier in previous session what exactly is the on-prem Hyper-V would be, or the differences between the Hyper-V at on-prem and Hyper-V on Azure. Okay, so look out to those topics as well. And like something called as the .vhdx, which is at on-prem, the VHD format which are available at on-prem are not supported at Azure. You need to go for VM generalization or generalize this particular VM to VHD. You can do that using sysprep tools, sysprep.exe. You can Google it and you will find how to sysprep your VM. You have, because I don't have any on-prem location or the VHD which I can sysprep and put onto Azure and boot a VM on top of it with the disks attached to that particular virtual machine. And when I talk about the virtual disk, right, the virtual disk should be fixed size. It's not some like managed disk kind of concept. It should not be. It should be a fixed size, and you can make a VHD file out of it, and you can put onto Azure and just boot it up. And the same thing, like how you, like once you have your VHD files booted up, it's easy to like once you make your VHD files from on-prem, it's easy to take your application, like the VHD, and boot up a virtual machine from on top of it. What you can do, you can go to marketplace and my images. I'll try to search. Let's see, I have. So whenever let's me compute virtual machine. Yes, marketplace or gallery is the same. So in the old portal, I used to do this one. Like I have something called as my images. Okay, so this is a place, once you have VHDs, you upload to Azure, and in this place you will have your images, the .vhds which you have created from a virtual machine at on-prem. It would be visible from here. You select a VHD and then you directly give your username, password, and the username, password, and just mention any VNets if you want, and you are ready to go and start up a VM with that particular VHD. And sometimes what happens, you try to transfer disks as well, and from on-prem you want to just export your disks or secondary disks or hard disks where you have huge number of application data in it. Just put on to upload to Azure. Like what you do is, you use some tool called as Azure Storage Explorer, and this is a little bit early to show this particular example of Azure Storage Explorer. I wanted to show in when we go to storage sessions in module 3, but we'll be using this Azure Storage Explorer. Let it come up, and using that Azure Storage Explorer, you upload the disk into it under your subscription using that tool, and you will have this disks available here. So once you get the disks available, if you have any VMs running already on Azure, you can attach those disks, those new disks, into that particular virtual machines, even if it is not that virtual machine which you were running at on-prem. You can do this. Yeah, that's possible on Azure. That was the old way of doing that, and new way I need to find out where exactly my images goes and sit. If possible, you guys try that. Where exactly after you upload your images, try to Google it and find out the location where it goes and from where you can pick it up. I mean, where is a gallery and from where you can pick it up. And this is my storage explorer. It's loading up. So I have authenticated or logged into my subscription. I can see whatever I have created something called the Azure guy, right? Cloud service that had a storage. So this is a storage which I can see, and the storage is of these many types, which we'll know later. And what contents are there, you can see using this particular tool. Okay, and we were at a point where I was explaining something as compute emulator. So once I have this emulator, right? Let me run this this locally, and you will see my roles or instances. I said, right, like emulator, what they do is they would be creating a Azure kind of environment or emulator. Emulators are basically, it would create a virtual environment where it would be there on Azure. And let me try to open our compute emulator. If I'm correct, and I have chosen an instances around. I have chosen my instances, one instances. So I should be seeing one role which would be running in this particular compute. Emulator. Let the deployment into this particular emulator happen. See, it says that when I test locally, deploying service package to emulator. Okay, let me restart that, because the emulator previously I opened Visual Studio and that was without any administrative privilege, and this particular Visual Studio is an administrative privilege. So I'll try to run it again. Once I run it, you can see the emulator or the Azure kind of environment which would also be coming up. So it's initializing the emulator. You should be seeing, yes, we are seeing our emulator here. Started, and we don't have anything related to storage emulator, that's why it's not started up. We have our compute emulator. Let's open, show compute emulator. See, we have opted for only one single instance, right, role. So that's what it's running here. See, this is nothing but it says that role set. These all are the life cycle of a role when you start it up and end it up or stop it up. So these all are the roles. So this is the 0th instance which you are there, or it has created. If it's on Azure, it would have created an instance on Azure, but in order to test locally, you will have some instances like this locally. If I would have adapted to 2 particular instances, let's change that number of instances to 3 or 4. You will be able to see. So just it's my application is hung, just okay, ready. Come on, I'll make it to, don't hung this machine, I'll make it to 6 instances. I'll just stop it. Six instances. I don't know whether this would. Okay, let me do at least. See, it's coming up with sizes and the cores and the MB RAMs as well. Let's try deploying it. But this here it's saying that you need to have full emulator to boot up 2 instances. Because for testing, it would just create a single instance. but now they would have restricted. I hope. Let's see whether we have in a storage emulator 2 instances or a single instance only. Show compute emulator. Yes, for testing we just only have one. Spark. Okay, they would have. So otherwise, what should happen? It should run 2 particular instances, but for now they have made for test. In order to, because you can go and select 100 instances, just that would just go and crash your computer CPU cycle, and then it would crash your computer. So this is what the basic work with a cloud service. How do you work with a cloud service? And this is a yes cloud service container, and this is the same thing. Whatever you are doing with the UI, you can edit the XML and see. We were mentioning size, right? You can edit here and you can do that same. These are the configuration. We have different configuration. You can change different configuration. You can use different thumbprint. If it's a cloud or if it's your production environment, you can have a different thumbprint, or you won't be, as a developer, you will have a local environment for this thumbprint. Your desktop, your laptop is okay. But when it goes to deployment, maybe other teams or other production machines are doing this deployment, and that should have thumbprint of this. So this thumbprint, that particular prod machine thumbprint or deployment machine thumbprint should also be there here. So you'll have multiple number of certificates getting added once your team grows up, and you will be deploying it multiple times. That's what we